Rick, thanks for coming on the show. Again, sorry for the tech issues this morning, but I'm glad we're still here cooking.
No problem. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So can you go ahead and let everybody know just who you are, what your deal is, and that for people who may not know?
I'm Rick Austin, also known as the Survivalist Gardener. I'm married to Survivor Jane, who's got the largest preparedness website for women. Among the 7 businesses that I do now that I'm retired, one of them is Prepper Camp. And, we are the largest outdoor preparedness event in the country, 10 years running. So this is our 10th year this year. And we sell out every single year. People come from every corner of the US and Canada. And we even had somebody from Australia last year, which is pretty neat. She actually wanted to come the year before, but because of the lockdowns that they had in Australia, she couldn't go more than 5 kilometers from her house. So,
really?
Yeah, she had bought tickets and everything. So, but we have people come from all over the country. The ticket price is nothing compared to what people invest just to get there, because they are coming from California, dragging an RV. And, it takes them a week to get to Prepper Camp, and then they're there for 3 days, and then it takes them a week to get back. So there's a significant investment people make just to come to the show. And those people, because of that, tend to be the opinion leaders of their groups back home. So they, go to a class and get turned on by something. They buy something from one of the vendors. It's a neat, cool product that nobody's ever seen before. And, they tell all their friends, and, they want to buy it too. Or, oh, that Rick Austin, he's got that Secret Garden of Survival book. It was really a good class. I think I'll go buy that book. So yeah, we have been living off the grid essentially for the last 15 years, my wife and I. And we had always planned on doing it, but we ended up retiring at 50 because things were just getting worse. We were living in Orlando. We were living in a nice gated community, but it got to a point where sheriff's helicopters were going over in this gated community, and their searchlights were in our yard, 3 nights a week. And it was just one of those things where, we would drive in from work. We would, push the button to open the garage door. We'd drive in, make sure nobody got in behind us, close the garage door, punch in the keypad for the home alarm, get in the door, then close the door, lock the door, punch in the keypad again. So we were really living in a prison. It
sounds like it.
Yeah. So we just said, we want to get out of here. We want to do this. And, but what really ramped things up and where we went, sped things up and started was, she was carjacked at gunpoint, when she was coming out of out of work one day in a parking garage. And after that, we said, okay, we're done. We're out of here. This is not a safe place to be anymore. We don't want to be here. So we cashed in everything. We sold the house, cashed in the 401ks, and just said, okay, we're going to do it. We're going to jump off the cliff. And it was scary because we were very unprepared in a lot of different ways. But, that's, I think, the way to do it. You're kind of forced into that situation. And we were. I mean, Jane never cooked before we moved off grid. The kitchen was 4 walls that held up the rest of the building, really.
Right.
And because we were in the corporate world, we went out and we ate out every night or ordered in, or, it was just, that was the lifestyle we had. And now we grow all of our own food and raise our own livestock. And we started with 3 goats and a couple of rabbits and 1 chicken and 4 ducks. And now we have over 120 animals. But they're very different than your typical farmstead, homestead type of place. We raise animals that are very sustainable in and of themselves. So we have dairy goats, Nigerian dwarf dairy goats. They only come up to my knee, but 3 of those girls at any one time will produce 1.5 gallons of milk a day. And
Wow.
for 2 people, that's great. So, Jane has had to learn how to, quote, move the milk every single day. And, she's got to turn that into something. So aside from, drinking milk, she makes cheese, every kind of cheese out there. She makes cheesecake, sour cream, basically every dairy product that you would get at the store. And so we make all that stuff. The best ice cream in the world, because it's 50% more butterfat than cow's milk, and butterfat is good for you. So, when people come here and they eat a meal that we prepare, and it comes from, our sustainable food forest garden and our livestock, it's like they're tasting food for the first time. They're just amazed. You look at what's in the grocery store, and they've got strawberries that are, 3 inches long. We go, strawberries don't grow that way. That is not a real strawberry.
How big is a strawberry when you get it like that you grow wild?
Maybe 1.5 inches or something like that. But when you're looking at 3 or 4 inch strawberries, these things are gigantic. And then you cut them inside, and they're all white. Mm-hmm. They're not red. They're not juicy. They're pumped up. They're full of drugs. They're genetically modified, and it's just unnatural. But people love it because, oh wow, they're such beautiful red strawberries. Little do they know that they dye them so they look that good, and that's the kind of stuff that you're eating when you think you're eating, what's good for you, as opposed to the chips and all that other crap.
Have you noticed a health impact, like a beneficial health impact on your life?
Oh, yeah. When I tell people I'm 67 years old, they don't believe it. It's like, no way. So it's, yeah. We're really, really, I think, healthier and stronger than we've ever been. And of course, working the farm, we're always moving. I'm always carrying stuff, buckets of water, feed, everything else. So it's there's just a lot of exercise. Plus, life on the homestead does not always go the way you think it's going to go. You can say, this is what I'm going to do today, and have everything set. And then something happens, nature happens, something happens to an animal, a wind blows a tree over on your fences, and suddenly you are taking care of business because, you've got to protect everybody and make sure that nothing happens to them. So,
yeah, with all you have going on as far as getting prepper camp ready, Jane running her website, you having your site, doing books and all the different businesses you have, how much time does it take in a day to just do your preparedness, get food forest, that kind of stuff during the day?
It depends on the time of year. In the wintertime, it's just dealing with the animals. And in the early spring, we're just kind of watching stuff happen. The beauty of this secret garden of survival I have, this camouflage food forest, is that, nature takes care of pretty much everything. You plant it, you put in the right infrastructure, you step back, get out of the way, and just let nature take its course. And I was, in an earlier life, I was kind of a gentleman farmer. I had apple orchards, and I sprayed pesticide every 10 days and after every rain. I used fertilizer, weed killer. All my trees were planted, in straight rows going in both directions, and leaves touching each other. And I still had scabby, wormy apples, just like every other apple farmer, and realized that, there's something just not right about this. And I read about quote unquote permaculture, and said, well, this sounds interesting. This makes intuitive sense to me. And so when we created this homestead, I said to Jane, I'm going to try this. And so I, kind of set up the infrastructure where we've got these little ecosystems. And you start with a fruit tree or a nut tree, and that starts off small, and then eventually it grows up and grows out and creates a canopy. and under that canopy is full shade. And then there are certain plants that enjoy that shade, and there's a symbiotic relationship between the tree and the plants that enjoy the shade. And nature has a way of finding out, how to get where they need to get. So a lot of this stuff just kind of happens miraculously. And then outside of that shade is full sun, and that's where you plant your shrubs, like your blueberries, your blackberries, your elderberries, those kind of things. And then outside of that, these are kind of concentric circles. Outside of that is your herb layer. So that's your cooking herbs, your medicinal herbs. And the beauty of this whole system, and this is how nature grows things naturally, is the herb layer. The herbs is the kind of outer circle, concentric circle, and that's always flowering. So it's always bringing in pollinators and predatory wasps that will kill the bad bugs that you don't want to have on the rest of your fruit. So that is kind of our natural pesticide, the way nature has intended. And, every time man thinks he can do it better, he fails miserably. And we tried this, and I was a guy who had done farming for years and years and years. And I was absolutely amazed at the production that we get out of this garden. And we've been doing it now for 15 years. And, everything just grows bigger, taller, thicker. And now our fruit trees are 30 plus feet tall. So there's that much more fruit going out there. Oh, wow. I mean, the first year we had all the food we could eat. And now we're feeding, 120 animals off of that and ourselves, and still have plenty of excess.
How big of a piece of land do you have?
The land itself that we're on, it was 55 acres, but we only do everything we do except for the hog operation is on less than 2 acres. So that includes our house, the barns, all the other animals. So this is very, very sustainable, for lack of a better word. And what's amazing to me is when people go to my presentations, they go, "Oh, wow, I don't have a lot of space. I didn't realize you could do this." But you just create these little ecosystems and just stick a bunch of them together. And I think the space that we have for the secret garden of survival is like 120 feet by 90 feet. So it's not very much. And we're on the side of a mountain too, which is totally unconventional. We put terraces in place, and, water runs downhill. And if you create the right kind of terraces with little berms on the end of them, water sinks in, creates this kind of lens-shaped pool of water underneath the plants. And the plants that we have out in the garden are primarily perennials. So in other words, you plant once and you harvest for a lifetime. So you get the infrastructure in place and just let nature take its course and get out of the way. And then the work, to get back to your original question, in the garden is just harvesting, every day in the summertime. So the strawberries come first, the raspberries, the blueberries, the peaches, the pears eventually. And we just harvest what's ripe at the time. So I'll go through the garden with a couple of 6-gallon buckets, and I will pick what's ripe and leave what isn't, unlike what they do commercially, where they pick everything and then color it to make it look like it's right. So, I'll pick what's right. And so a blueberry might be, really, really dark blue, and I'll pick that. And there's one next to it that's a little redder. And then there's some that are green and some that are white. And, I just go through one day and pick what's ripe. Then next day I come back through, pick what's ripe. The next day I come back through, and the stuff that was red is now blue. And it's, very sweet, perfect fruit, and with all those nutrients in it. So that's the work, is really just harvesting. And the real work is done by Jane. Because when I'm bringing in 12 gallons of fruit a day, at some point she screams in the middle of the summer, "Stop! I can't do this anymore." So as a prepper, I'm almost ashamed to say that we have 3 freezers, and oftentimes we'll get halfway through the season and freeze a lot of the stuff so that she can get to, doing all the different things that we do with this stuff. So, we've got, aside from freezing the food that we have, we can it, cold pack it, depends on what it is. We even now have, we'll dehydrate it, and we even now have a freeze dryer, which was a significant investment, but it's just one more way to provide storage food for us.
Right. What's your takeaway so far on your freeze dryer? How long have you had it, and what are your thoughts?
This is a little over a year. And my takeaway on the freeze dryer is they do a really good job of marketing it, but it takes a lot longer than they tell you it does. So it's using a lot more electricity, and it's also creating more electricity because the thing generates heat. And I know on the outside of the machine, which generates heat in your house, which now you have to cool off, because if you're doing this in the middle of summer when you have all this fruit coming in, you've got to that's the whole purpose of it. So fortunately, we have a whole house solar system, and we run air conditioning off of that. So but that was one of the last things that we've installed, just because we've lived without that for a long time. And then
Sure.
I sold enough books where I said, you know what, we'll just take this and we'll, because I've had my entire barn run off of solar long before this. So it keeps the fans going and keeps my livestock safe, because we get to triple digits here sometimes here in the Appalachian Mountains. And once you get past 113 degrees with a heat index, we start losing animals. So we're trying to protect them too.
Yeah, it makes sense. Speaking of heat, I was watching you, I think it was Toolman Tim or something like that out of Canada. You did a YouTube interview with him, and you had mentioned that you figured out your home water heating when you grabbed a black pipe at Home Depot or something. It was hot.
Yeah. I grew up in the construction industry. My father was a plumbing contractor and heating contractor. So I learned a lot from him. I worked for him during the summers. I hated it, but I learned a lot of things about building and construction. And so, my father's claim to fame was that he was, back in the 1970s, he was the largest installer of solar heating and hot water systems in New England. So I learned a lot, and the houses that I've had in the past had a lot of solar in them, various types of solar. And I created this greenhouse, which is an add-on to my home, which is facing south, because that's where the sun is. That's the most intense. That's my gardens on the south side of the mountain. So our entire home is very efficient. We have isonine spray and foam insulation that keeps this thing. It's like a giant envelope. So it doesn't really take much to heat, which is ideal because you don't want to be spending money you don't need to spend, just keeping yourself warm or cool. So right. I wanted to add on a greenhouse that would be a year-round greenhouse. So it's quite unique. It's insulated. But there's a lot of glazing and glass that we have for the roof and for the side windows. And I even have a book just about the greenhouse, the secret greenhouse of survival. And there's a lot of really neat engineering going on in there. Our plants are in planters that are basically concrete walls that go around and they come up to your waist. And we put natural stuff inside those planters, stuff that we got off the land from leaves and trees and tree bark and the original clay from here and some topsoil, and everything just does fantastically there. There's nothing better than having a fresh tomato in December, as part of your meal. Everything has stopped growing outside. So and we have some pretty cold winters. We've had 33 degrees below zero with the wind chill factor. I've got quick, pictures looking out into what looks like blue snow out there, and everything is growing and just doing fine in the greenhouse. And there is not one single source of heat for that greenhouse other than the sun beating down in and going and hitting those the thermal mass of those concrete walls, and then the sun, it absorbs that heat from the sun during the day and gives it off evenly at night. So the plants really never get too cold.
From loading the concrete walls with heat.
Yeah, yeah. And the floor, and floor is gravel, which it's a wet environment, so you really can't have a concrete floor there or a wooden floor. All the wood is pressure treated because it's a very wet environment. It's a greenhouse. So one of the things that I wanted to do is I said, this is great because I can share the heat that's made in the greenhouse with the house because they're connected. And I even created little solar fans that when the sun's out, it runs. When the sun's not out, it doesn't. So it sucks the warm, humid air from the greenhouse into the house in the wintertime. And that humid air is something you need. If you've lived anywhere in the winter where it's really, really cold, you realize that the house gets dry. You kind of get that sick house syndrome. And the beauty of that is that, plants give off oxygen and we breathe oxygen, and we give off carbon dioxide and the plants breathe carbon dioxide. So there is a cycle right there, a symbiotic relationship between us and the plants. And so we've got highly oxygenated and humid air in the wintertime inside the house, which just makes things much more comfortable for us. But I said, I'm known as a cheap SOB. I was a businessman my entire life. The reason that we have the livestock we have is I'm looking for the best return on my investment. I want to put as little money, little effort, and a little time in as I possibly can and get the most out. And
Right.
that's just being smart. So I was at Lowe's one day, and I was looking for some black pipe, water piping, and I reached down, and this piping was out in the sun, and it was so hot that it literally burned my hand. And I said, "Oh, wait a minute, and I have an idea." So I bought 800 feet of this pipe, and 8 coils of 100 feet each, and I literally hooked them all together in series and hung them on the ceiling of my greenhouse right next to where the glazing is.
Oh.
And the water comes in at 45 degrees, goes in one end of the 100-foot coils, and then circles through, and then goes into the next coil and circles through and goes to the next coil. So by the time it runs through all 800 feet, I have 140-degree water, all for free.
Oh, wow. Nice. That's awesome. That
So-
works well. And so it's inside, and you said it's inside your greenhouse, right? The
Yeah,
coils?
inside the greenhouse. Yeah. Right up by the ceiling. So, the sun's beating down and it's heating the water year round for us. So it doesn't really cost us anything in terms of power and electricity to keep that hot water.
So obviously you growing up in New Hampshire, and with your dad being on the leading edge, it sounds like he was on the leading edge of solar.
Oh, he was.
If he's
Yeah.
doing it in
Yeah,
the
he was.
70s.
Yeah.
When you were down in Florida, were you into preparedness, or was that okay?
Yeah, I've always been a Boy Scout. So yeah, I was so when I lived in New Hampshire, you could lose power for a week or two at a time because of an ice storm. And then you learned how to cook with wood and heat with wood, and you actually took your stuff out of the refrigerator because you didn't have any electricity, and you'd put it out in the snow to keep it preserved, keep it cool. In Florida, you get the exact opposite situation where you've got 90-degree heat, 90% humidity, and a hurricane goes through and you lose power for a week at a time. You're in a whole different scenario. But I've lived in both those environments. So I've been prepared for quite a while. So
Nice. Now, speaking of that, since you're really tied in, obviously, with Prepper Camp and everything you do, and I know you have you're in a prepper group and all the stuff you got. What and as such, you've got your fingers on the pulse of the prepping community really well, especially being down in the Carolinas, North Carolina Prepping Network, all the stuff you have going on down there. With that, what do you see as the greatest challenges facing the prepper community right now, and some of the shortcomings or strengths of preppers in addressing those challenges, by and large?
What's interesting to me is when we started Prepper Camp, and this is our 10th year, the people that came were amazingly just normal people. They were just normal people that most of them would not admit that they were preppers to anybody else that they knew. So they were closet preppers. You know, they didn't say anything about it, but they came to the event and they found camaraderie and learned stuff. But they weren't, you know, tinfoil hat wearing idiots. They weren't what doomsday preppers, you know, tried to create out of, and we can talk about that a little bit too, but you know, they were, the people that did doomsday preppers were New York producers. You know, they just wanted to get eyeballs to the TV set. And I understood that completely because, you know, my career was in television and the media before I, you know, moved off the grid. So, I mean, I understand why they did that. But, you know, they would make people look like complete idiots because they'd say, hey, you know, why don't you do this and we'll get that on camera. And so they would blindly do it. And then they look like fools on doomsday preppers. When it came for us to do doomsday preppers, we did this pepper spray thing that we made out of peppers that we grow in the greenhouse. And they said, hey, you know, why don't you invite some of your friends over and then we can spray them and get that on camera. I'm like, what in the F are you thinking? Why would I do that? You're making me look like an idiot. Yeah, like an idiot. So there were a lot of things like that we did. But you know, what amazed me is, like I said, at Prepper Camp, the first year you had people that just weren't really admitting it to their families and weren't really admitting it to their friends, because everybody thought they were crazy because they'd seen doomsday preppers and you're just one of those tinfoil hat wearing guys. And the reality is they just wanted to take care of their families. They just were looking to, you know, they were being responsible, you know, and they were the nicest people, you know, for the most part, really good, value Christian type people. And it was great. And this last year, people are waking up. People are really waking up. And, you know, we have a lot of repeat people that come to Prepper Camp, but then we have a lot of new guys and, you know, every year. And my first class, first hour of Prepper Camp, I asked, okay, how many of you have seen any of my presentations before? And almost nobody did. I said, how many of you are first-time prepper campers? And I would say 90% was the first time.
Wow.
So to me, that says people are waking up, maybe a little bit too late. And I said, so why? And they said, well, why do you think? You know, look what's happening. And so people are, you know, getting prepared because they know they have to, and they know that they can't rely on the government to take care of them. They've got to rely on themselves.
Well, it makes that more resilient society, right? So yeah, I think that's it's interesting. Was it yesterday? Day before yesterday. I'm out at my dad's house right now in California. I'm 20 minutes from Hollywood. I'm 15 minutes from all the ABC, Disney, all the studios. So I went to an open mic comedy thing the other night and was watching it. And it was interesting because obviously a lot of the people that got up there are very far left. And I would say probably half of them, if not more, made comments to like how insane everything's going right now. Which I was kind of surprised. There's, you know, I didn't expect them to be like, oh, like we're getting ready to have major problems. Because that's typically the crowd that denies it, right? And like, but no, it was across the board, and I was like, "Wow, this is really interesting."
Well, you know, even when we've had film crews here, they look at what we're doing, and our lifestyle appeals to, you know, the preppers who are trying to take care of themselves, and the greeny, you know, save the earth people. They look at it and say, wow, that's really cool. Oh, wait a minute. So one of the one of the cameramen is looking at this this 2-liter soda bottle hanging from a string in our garden, and it's been cut off. The top has been cut off, and inside of it is
Nice.
water and some dog poop that is just a slurry mixture. And he says, "Is that a fly trap? Oh, that is the coolest thing. That's how we get we get rid of our house flies." Because when you have animals, they're all attracted to that. But they can appreciate that too, and they can also appreciate the whole sustainability thing that we're doing in terms of growing food and everything else. So I once had a producer say to me, my in-laws are hippies in Vermont, and the people that you appeal to, on that side and on the right side are ultra mega preppers. And he said, you appeal to both those people, and it's just taking care of yourself. It's just living. It's just letting nature do what it's intended to do.
Well, there's been a big shift in the prepping community too, right? I mean, towards that more self-sustainability, and I
think so, because when we started off, and Jane and I have been preaching this for years. You can't buy your way out of a crisis. If you think that you can just buy a bunch of stuff and buy a bunch of storage food, and I'm going to buy seeds, so if I ever need to plant something, I can, but I've never actually planted anything before, never actually grown anything, you're just an idiot. I mean, you just don't you don't understand what you don't know what you don't know. If you really have to get in there and start doing it. And I'm always preaching to people that you have to stop being a consumer, because that's what you are. If you're just buying rounds of ammunition, and you're just buying seeds, and you're just buying storage food, you're still just a consumer. You need to become a producer. You need to start producing your own. And once you start doing that, now you will be self-sufficient. So when that food supply that you bought runs out, you have a way to live, the 20 some odd years after a major catastrophe or a world changing event.
Yeah. No, I think that I look into, I'm reading it's a dissertation by a guy named Chris Ellis, and he wrote it all on the preparedness community and, what goes into the mindset and all that. And it's pretty interesting. And he talks, gets into there about that, and had some interesting statistics as far as like the number of preppers that are prepared for more than 30 days or 90 days. And it's not a lot.
No.
So it's kind of,
Well, the DOD has war gamed this whole thing out. If we have a catastrophic whatever, let's say it is an EMP from a nuclear attack, or an EMP from the sun, that's going to wipe out the grid. That's probably the worst case scenario. It's everybody's going to be in the same boat. Cars won't run, fuel pumps won't work, refrigerators won't work in the grocery store. There will be no deliveries, and suddenly everybody's going to be in complete chaos. In 3 days, you're going to have people starting to die. You're going to have people starting to kill each other. Look what happened at Hurricane Katrina. I mean, that devolved so quickly into total anarchy and chaos. When people's kids start to be hungry and starve, and they can't get water, normally good moral people are going to do immoral things. And so that's the kind of the situation. And the DOD gamed this thing out and said, if we ever have that kind of a catastrophic event, 80% of the population will be dead in 2 months, killing each other, or from lack of food or lack of water, totally being unprepared. So what's going to be left are going to be the good guy preppers that did prepare, and the really, really, really bad, psychotic guys.
Yeah, it's interesting here, like in Los Angeles, I grew up here, right? And when you used to go to supermarkets, there's a lot of people because it's LA, but it wasn't packed. You go to a super, and because what they've been doing is they've been discouraging single family homes because they want tax revenue. So they've been encouraging multifamily homes, apartment buildings, and all this stuff. So as they've been growing up, the stores are just, you go into a store here and it's just packed full of people. And they're constantly, you see the little carts out in the aisles where they're constantly restocking the shelves. And I'm like, you're not even 3 days away from craziness.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You're a day, maybe a day, maybe two, but let me ask you this. What do you see as coming down the pike that they need to be ready for? Take it wherever you think it needs to go,
man. The World Economic Forum.
Right.
That is what we're looking at here is a systematic destruction of the United States of America. This is not a accident. This has been their plan for many years, and Obama was the beginning of it. Trump got in the way, and he stopped that, and he proved that there was other ways to run a country because Obama had said, well, this is the new normal, 1% growth and, all this unemployment. Well, if you do any study of history and you study the communists, this is how they do things. There was a guy in the 1970s who defected. He was a KGB officer and he defected to the United States, and he used to talk to students. And he said, the first thing that they do when they want to infiltrate and take over a country is eliminate God. Because once you eliminate God, there is no higher power than the government. So that is the number one thing that they do. They would take over the school systems. And in 1963, there was an FBI agent who had infiltrated the Communist Party in America. And he came up with a list of 45 things that they had on their list of what they were going to do to take over the country without a shot. Right. And, one of them was eliminating God in schools, eliminating God altogether, taking over and controlling the schools and the institutions of higher learning. They've done that, taking over the media and the film industry. They've done that. And if you go through all 45 of these points, you go, these guys have done all of that already. And they had a systematic plan, and it was going to take them 50 some odd years to do it. And you read that list and go, man, they've done it. They've done it. And there's a lot of people that aren't old enough to remember when it wasn't like that. But
right. When do you think like when you think about when it wasn't like that, what time, where are you looking at? Like what time frame?
I'm looking at Ozzie and Harriet. I'm looking at the 1960s, Leave It to Beaver, when the TV shows that you watched all had a moral compass, all had something that they left you with that was kind of preaching morality and, family unit and everything else. So that's all just kind of gone away. And
yeah. It's interesting. You're a few years older than me. And you might recall this. Do you remember Hill Street Blues? The TV show back in the day. Mm-hmm. Do you remember when they made the big deal because they, I want to say it was, they showed someone's butt at night laying in bed. And it was a huge deal. Like I remember it was on the news, like, it's only going to be showed because it's after 10 o'clock at night. And now we've moved from that, which I want to say was early mid 80s to,
part of on their list was on their list was debauchery and, lack of morality. I mean, just eliminating that entirely. And if you are a student of George Orwell and ever read 1984, we're here, we're there, the Ministry of Truth. Well, let's change history. Well, that never happened. Let's take people's pictures out of the newspaper and create another newspaper in the archives that doesn't have their picture in it because they're a non-citizen now. We're there. We are there.
In the movie The Matrix, right? They talk about the guy that ends up being the turncoat in the first movie. He talks about just put me back in the simulation and let me, have this great life. Let me be this baller in the simulation. Sometimes I have a tough I think I'm like, maybe I'm in a simulation, because if I wanted to write, what's the path that we go down for insanity and everything that's happening? I'm like, I couldn't write a better script for this.
Oh,
And this is like everything I've been, thinking about for years. And it's like, we're like with the list, right? We're checking off, we've hit this milestone, and, like to the point where, they're working on the digital, central bank digital currency right now is coming out.
I mean, if you had written the script 10 years ago, people would say, "Oh, that could never happen. That would be too impossible for people to believe."
Yeah. So what do you think right now, if someone's obviously people listening to this are preppers, but what should they be focusing, like with everything that's coming, just like what we talked about? Because I don't know what's going to happen from 1 minute to the next. Is there nuclear war going to kick off? Is the economy going to tank? There's so much that we used to talk about in isolation happening. That's all somewhat in play right now. Obviously get more independent. What should people be looking out for? What do you think is some indicators for them?
You're almost too late. You're almost too late, and you really need to, I mean, Jane's presentation, she tries to do something really topical every single year. And last year she did a class calling "Now What?" You've waited too long. Now what do you do? So she was giving people some tips on what to do now, because you're behind the 8 ball by a long shot. You should have moved years ago. You should have gotten out of the big city. You should be, you should have been self-sustaining long ago, so that you can be in a position where you can ride out the storm and live beyond. What you have to do is live the first 2 months. And then again, you're left with other people who are self-sufficient and the really bad, psychotic guys. And, okay, so now I know, who I need to take care of, and I can create systems to be able to do that, and, security measures to be able to do that, and have enough people around me who are like-minded that we can defend ourselves and defend our stuff. If you're in a big city now, you're dead. You're dead. Yeah. It's just, you're not going to make it. You're not going to make it. You have got to get the hell out and get to that retreat property you've always been talking about, or, you have, and it's sitting there and you haven't done anything with it. Because if you're there, it's going to devolve into chaos in less than 3 days, and they're pushing that. And I don't know if the Chinese are behind this with everything that's happening. I'm not really sure. It scares me when I hear that these military-age males from China are all coming across our border.
Across the border right now?
Across our border, and they all have the same kit. They all have the same backpack with the same stuff in it. And then we got 300,000 students from China in the United States right now. That is a big fifth column. And, those people don't have to fire a shot. They don't have to be, military age males, but they are beholden to the CCP. And, those are the kind of technology people that could take down an electric grid. That could.
It doesn't take much.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't take much. Our grid is in terrible shape. Shape.
Especially when you see most of the substations are surrounded by. It's not like there's a chain link fence, but my degree's in security management, and a chain link fence is like the low end of fencing, right? There's not a lot of security there. We saw what happened. What I think was it North Carolina, where the couple of the substations were shot up. Was that North Carolina or South Carolina a while back?
Yeah.
And so when I talk to people about that, I'm like, look, like you can say, well, people can say that, well, they're just people coming over here for jobs. And I'm like, maybe 99% of that's true. Mm-hmm. But when you have thousands coming across the border, and we know they've busted people that are on the terror watch list, where, I mean, I don't know how much faith I have in our terror watch list, but we know that there's really bad people that they've come across the border who want to do us harm. Out of those thousands of Chinese. When I was a firefighter, I worked in the largest suburban population of Chinese in the United States, and I didn't realize it before, but how many illegal Chinese come into the U.S.?
Mm-hmm.
All it takes is a few.
Oh yeah, yep.
And between them and the other type of terrorists and our own internal issues,
Yep.
I like, man,
Right.
you need to be on. Well, one good way to get on it is by going to prepper camp and getting the knowledge. Because I'll tell you, I really had the last time I was there, we talked about, I haven't been because my PTSD got so bad for a while, but when I was there, it was the volume of information, the amount of information, and the breadth that you can get from so many people. It was great. It was an awesome experience. Let's talk about prepper camp, man. What give me the origin story.
Yeah. Jane and I did Doomsday Preppers, or actually, before we did Doomsday Preppers, Jane was helping Doomsday Preppers with their marketing. So they were asking us, they asked us for 4 years to be on their show. And we said, we know what idiots you make people look like. We are not going to do that. No, we are not going to do that. She having such a huge audience, and she had, Twitter feed Prepper Talk for years. And, that was a place that people could talk who were other preppers and just share information. So she would, every night that they would have a Doomsday Preppers episode on, she would do a tweet chat. So people could talk about it, say what they thought. And, I was there being really snarky about how this person's really stupid for doing that, and it was a great thing. And there's people that I met on that I never met till prepper camp, never met face to face. The people that I knew online for years before that. But once we were on prepper camp, once we were on Doomsday Preppers, and that happened because I happened to be on Doomsday Castle in season 3 of Doomsday Preppers. And, the guy who owned that castle, that they made a whole show out of, creating this prepper paradise sort of, said, I want Rick Austin's Secret Garden of Survival as part of this. And he was insistent that this would be part of it because he had been to one of my classes and bought my book and, said, hey, I really want you to be on there. So we did, and we installed the garden there. And it was an enlightening thing for a lot of people. And when they did the press party at the castle and brought in people from all over the country who were the press because they wanted to talk about this show before it aired. I was there, and we were with the producers, and Jane and I sat down with them and said, you are doing these things where you've got people that have millions of dollars to spend. That's just not realistic. You need to create something, do a season where people are actually doing something within a budget, within a limited budget. And we said, if you do that, we'll do the show under certain caveats, of course. So there was stuff we had, I would say it was a month and a half of working out a contractual deal where they would not disparage us. And, we had a $1 million errors and omissions clause for if they did, and they couldn't disclose our location. And because the last thing I want is 2,000 Yahoos showing up here when the shit hits the fan. So,
right.
We being a business guy, I kind of knew how to do that stuff. And so every TV show that we've been on, including probably the most libtard show in history, The Daily Show, you were on The Daily Show. Yeah, we negotiated that with them. So I believe it's still up there, and you might be able to find it at my YouTube channel, Survivalist Gardener. But it's Can Liberals Survive the Apocalypse? And it is probably the funniest 6-minute segment they have ever done. And I've actually had millions of views on that, and it's hysterical. I mean, the woman who was the host was scripted, and I wasn't. And
wow,
it was really funny. I encourage your audience to go look for that because it was really, really funny. And they approached me and said, "Hey, yeah, we, there's so many people who are now liberals wanting to get into the prepping thing, and we want to do kind of a juxtaposition. We want Rick Austin, who's the godfather of prepping, to, be the guy that we go talk to. That, our host wants to know how to be a prepper. So we'll start with a liberal side and then go to, the way it's supposed to be done." And I said, "Yeah, you're full of shit. I don't believe anything you're saying to me. You are Comedy Central. You are the Daily Show. You are Viacom. I don't believe you." And it took 6 months before we agreed to do it. And I had it in writing that, they would not disparage us and that there would be $1 million penalty if they did. And, the host, who plays, a real libtard, she grew up in a conservative family. She was playing a character. And when between shootings that we were doing, she would come in the barn and, she'd play with the goats, and there were some baby goats, and she said, "Oh, could you take a picture for me? My 2-year-old, my 3-year-old would love to see this." And she said, "Well," you said, "Sure." So she was just a real person, just playing a role. But that was a great show. So, we got involved in doing all this stuff. We were doing a lot of stuff. We were on Doomsday Preppers, and then the prepping thing kind of took off. And lots of people were interested in prepping, or at least finding out what it was all about. And then you see there were guys that were business guys or promoters that weren't really preppers themselves. They were just trying to make a fast buck. So we ended up on the speaking circuit and, teaching people what we do. And mostly they were paying for us to be there at all these different prepper shows across the country because we were a marketing draw for them.
Right.
So we went there and we saw these things being done in convention centers where people were elbow to elbow and butt to butt. And they were so crowded that they really couldn't get a chance to ask questions or talk. And, we taught a couple of classes. And what we realized is that people wanted to know what they didn't know. They wanted to know what they needed before they bought something that really wasn't useful. So it was all about the education. And Jane, myself, and a couple of other people on this speaking circuit said, we would like to do a preparedness event that we would want to go to. So we really did a lot of work and research, and I probably spent a year trying to make this whole thing happen. And we found this great location in Saluda, North Carolina, which was I think the largest campground in that region in the lower Appalachian Mountains. So it would be a big enough venue for us, and it was really beautiful. And these people were good Christian people, and we met them because they ended up buying goats from us, and they bought goats from us because they went to a prepper thing that we were at and that Jane and I both spoke at. And they said, "Well, do you ever sell any of your baby goats?" And yeah, well, we have babies. We do sell them. So this was kind of a God thing. I never in my entire existence running this farm have I ever delivered any goats or any livestock. People come and get it. I don't go there. But for some reason I did, and I went to their place, and we delivered the babies, and the guy said, "Hey, I've got this campground. Let me just take you around." So I never realized a golf cart could run that fast. It was like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride running through. And he said, "This might be a good place to, tell people about or do whatever. And, we've got kind of a prepper mindset." And I said, "This is it. This is the place." So it was Orchard Lake Campground in Saluda. And at first, when we said we wanted to do the prepper camp thing there, they weren't sure that they wanted to let people know that they had what they had and that was where they were. So they literally had to pray on it for a while. And they finally said, "You know what? If we don't do it, it's not going to get done. And people need to know what it is you're doing." So we created the first event. And after we did this and we sold out, and we were the largest event. I mean, I've done lots of events before in my lifetime.
Sure.
So, I am a marketing guy. I know how to do this kind of stuff, but there was a lot that we didn't know. And there was a lot that was problematic in terms of trying to figure out the right kind of logistics. And it was the first time, we had to get the right tent supplier. We had to get the right TV supplier. We had to get, computers and work out all those details. And it was pretty tough. After the first one, actually, before it was done, I had people coming up to me and said, "Oh, this is the best event ever. This is great. Are you going to do it again next year?" And I said, "Look, you don't ask a woman who just gave birth if she's ready to have another baby." It's just, I'm not really sure I want to do this again. I mean, it took a lot out of me, and it was a good, aside from the year in advance, just putting the whole thing together it was, about 10 months of planning and preparation and trying to cajole speakers into coming. And, oh, I don't know, this is a first time event. I don't know if I want to bother going there. And so it was like God's hand was involved. I mean, our first year, we had this tremendous thunderstorm coming through, and you could see the black clouds coming toward the event. And we're thinking, oh man, this is an outdoor event. We have tents where people are speaking, but this really looks ominous. It looks like we're about to have a tornado. And the clouds literally parted around prepper camp and went by. And I said, okay, that's a message. And, so we've been doing this. This is like Jane's and my ministry. That's how we give back. So, we do it in such a way that if we were trying to make money doing this, I could make way more money working for McDonald's. It's just not, that's not what we do. This is not about making money. It's about trying to cover our costs and, our fixed cost and our variable costs so that, we can put it on and break even. So, I spend 10 months. I mean, we get done from prepper camp, we come back. Now we're doing inventory and we're paying the last bills. And so there's at least a month of that going on. And so we sort of have a month off before I have to start planning for the next one. And I'm always looking for new speakers, new classes, something new to keep things fresh, something topical based on what's going on in the political arena and the prepping arena. So every year we have about 20 new classes out of the 64 we have every single day. And it keeps it fresh. It keeps, the people who are coming back again and again to prepper camp, something else, something new to see. Of course, I have to cut 20 classes from the year before to have 20 new ones, but we got great speakers. We got people that come, just because they want to be part of the event. And I have speakers
fun event.
I have speakers coming from California, from Texas, from Florida, from New York, literally all over the country. But these people are the best at what they do. And, they're great instructors. And the stuff that we have that we're doing every year is there's this sort of standard stuff that you would want to know, basic bushcraft type stuff like trapping and tracking and how to start a fire and how to cook on a Dutch oven and how to grow livestock and my secret gardener survival and that kind of stuff. Those are year to year because there's stuff that people who are just getting started need to know. But every year we've got new stuff that we haven't done before. So we're doing a kidnapping class, not how to kidnap somebody, but how to avoid being kidnapped. We've got self-defense classes. We've got homesteading classes. We get everything from how to make cheese to how to make soap, to self-defense, hands-on self-defense. One of our self-defense instructors is Sarah Hathaway, who happens to be a podcaster, but she is this little girl and she can knock over somebody who's 7 feet tall. I mean, she's just a
ball of fire.
fireball. Oh, she is.
Yeah.
She is. So we've got all that kind of stuff, and now we've got a class on AI this year because hey, that's a problem. We're going to talk about the World Economic Forum and the banking system and what's in store for us so that they can create this central digital currency and control all of us because they're following the China model, and how to protect yourself from that stuff. So we've got from technology stuff to just how do you start a fire, or how do you take care of yourself when there's no hospital. So the traditional medical food preparation classes right down to how to protect yourself digitally.
Right. How many people do you get attending usually?
2,000.
2,000. Okay.
And we cut it off at that.
As that's what we cut off.
Yeah, we cut it off at that because we don't. Again, I've been a marketing guy. I've been told that we could have 2 to 3 times that many people there, and I said that's not the point. We're not trying to do this to make money. We want it to be a fantastic experience for everybody that attends. We don't want people to feel crowded. We don't want people to go to classes and not be able to find a seat. We want people to be able to hear the speaker, and so we just don't. We cut it off at 2,000 and that's it. And we always have people that are clamoring, crying, begging for tickets after we stop the ticket sales or after we run out of tickets. Sorry, if you're really a prepper, you should have figured this out. You should have done something, a little sooner, not at the last minute. So sorry. But that's lesson learned for those guys.
Yeah, no, it's a great event, man. I'll tell you, it's one of the most enjoyable weekends I've had. Was my weekend in a long time. Was my weekend at Prepper Camp because the people, everybody there was fantastic. From your team that puts it on to the people that are there. They're so excited to be getting information and having great conversations. It's really well done, and Orchard Lake it's a beautiful campground.
Mm.
The lake there behind. I mean, you watch someone speak to you about preparedness, and you're looking out onto a lake.
Yep.
Pretty
exactly.
cool, man. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
When's Prepper Camp again? It's September what?
I should
22nd or something like that.
Yeah, it's the almost last weekend of September. Yeah. So and you can find out everything you need to know at preppercamp.com. So we still have to post our new classes. We still haven't done that yet, but that's coming soon. And there's a ticket page there. So you just scroll down, click. There's also hotels and other stuff. I just got an email like 2 days ago from somebody who runs a bed and breakfast in the region and said, oh, Prepper Camp must be getting full because we're getting full. And we always look forward to this time of the year. And I said, I'm reminded of the reason that Walt Disney bought all that property at Disney World because he was so pissed about the fact that all of these hotels were making money off of his Disneyland event. He said, next time I build one of these things, I'm going to own the land and, lease out the hotel stuff. I'm going to get a cut of all this stuff. So I just said, I really ought to be getting the commission from all these hotels.
Yeah, I should be an Airbnb affiliate or something.
Yeah. But
no, that's
again,
great,
that's not why we do it, but
right. No, I'm looking forward to it again, man. It's a fun weekend. I'm excited to be going again this year and looking forward to getting there and seeing you and everybody else that's there. So before we get out of here, man, why don't you go ahead, let everybody know where they can find you, find all your books, all the stuff that you need to promote out there. And
sure. You can go to secretgardenofsurvival.com. All run together, secretgardenofsurvival.com. And that'll give you links to the books. You can get them from Amazon. You can get them from Barnes and Noble. You can get them electronically as well. Prepper Camp is preppercamp.com. And, just follow the links to the ticketing page. You can find out really everything about the event, the classes that we've had, had last year, and some of the classes we're having again this year, and how we schedule stuff. I mean, I like running a tight ship. So, our classes are an hour long. There's 15 minutes between classes. And I demand of our speakers that we start on time and they finish on time so that everybody can get to the next class that they have to get to. Because these classes are an hour long, and you're not going to learn everything you need to know about a subject, but it'll teach you enough so that you know what you don't know and what you need to find out more about. So it's just a great introductory class for all of these different subjects. And of course, there's the vendors there too, and we get demonstrations and everything from how to do trapping to how to get out of handcuffs to I've got a guy there that does dogs for the military, and police and executive protection dogs. So they do demonstrations there too at lunchtime on each day.
Oh, nice. That'll be a great time, man. Well,
yeah.
Thanks, Rick. I appreciate you coming on the show, and I'm looking forward to seeing you at Prepper Camp in September, man.
Yeah,
Keep
likewise.
up the great work.
Likewise. You won't see much of me. I'll be buzzing by in the golf cart, but yeah.
No, the first time I went, I was going, let me say hi to Rick, and I looked at you. I'm like, oh, that dude doesn't have a minute to say hi to anybody. Like you were sweating, and you were covered in sweat, and you were moving all day.
I wish I could go to the classes that are there. I mean, I really wish, because when I pick out classes and when I agree to do something, it's like, wow, man, that would be great to learn. I'd love to learn that, but I don't have the time because I am trying to keep everything as seamless as possible and head problems off at the pass so that no one even knows that we had an issue with technology or we had an issue with whatever. So yeah, I'm kind of moving a lot that weekend. So it's, but that's what it takes to do it.
Chen going to be there this year?
Yeah. Yep. He's going to be there.
Cool.
He's going to be there.
Good deal. All right, Rick. Well, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for coming on the show. Sorry about the hiccups early with the tech, and I look forward to seeing you in September, man. Thanks again.
Not a problem. Look forward to seeing you too.